Martin Amidu has been fired. We're looking at the consequences and we're asking, would you have fired him if you were the president, or would you have retained him? Also, we're looking at the NDC primaries, which it's underway as we speak. We'll tell you more about that and look at the party's preparedness and do a stress test really of their internal systems, just to check if they are prepared against the possible defections and independent candidates who might come out of these primaries. We'll obviously look at the posters of Nana Konadu and Rawlings emerging in the course of the week, and then we'll look at the NPP flag bearer. There was expectation that he would name his running mate this week, but it wasn't so. We'll find out why, and also really interrogate this fixation on northern candidates as vice presidential tickets, and also of Muslim origin or Muslim religion, if possible. Let's meet our guests now in the studios with us today. We've got John Bodu. He's the Deputy Director of Communications for the NPP. We've also got in the studios with us Kofi Adams. He's the NDC's Deputy General Secretary and a spokesperson for Mr. Rawlings. So hopefully he'll be able to give us some insight about whether or not Mrs. Rawlings is running for 2012, as the posters seem to suggest. Abdul Malik Kwekubaku Jr. is the managing editor of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. We're hoping to have been joined by James Ejenim Boating, Deputy Tourism Minister. He confirmed, but unfortunately we're told today and this morning, as we were about to start the program, that he's either in North Tongue or headed there for the NDC primaries. If it's possible to get a replacement for him, we'll bring that to you. But we're going to start our discussion this morning looking at Martin Amidu's gargantuan allegations, which has led to his gargantuan exit from government. I'm sure you would have heard in the course of the week that the president had asked him to name the said minister who he accuses of perpetrating gargantuan crimes against the people of Ghana. We're told there was a meeting at the castle, after which he stormed out, and subsequently a statement came out to say that he was fired for misconduct at a meeting on Friday presided over by President Mills. Bear in mind that he had filed or reviewed the existing rate on the Woyomi saga. So why was Martin Amidu fired? Let's hear the Director of Communications at the castle, Koku Anyidoho.
Act out of anger. He didn't act on the spur of the moment and say that, look, you put out this allegation and so go out. No. So stay within the system and you are given time. Let us know what it is that you are really talking about. Give us specifics. If you are able to, why not? We'll follow the lead. But if after a while you are unable to provide any evidence, it remains a wild allegation and all your colleagues are indicted, the whole government structure is indicted. It's only right and proper that you are asked to step aside, because you cannot just throw a wild allegation out there and not substantiate. And so the president gave some time in line with his leadership style, and nothing came out of it. Too bad. Then the president has no option but to ask you to step aside. My senior colleague, if indeed had facts, should have had the facts by the side of the statement that he was releasing as the chief legal officer at the time that you were putting out the application. Everyone will want to believe that you had the facts and figures by your side. The president had no option. We're talking about governance here. We're talking about leadership. Nobody undermines the authority of the leader and goes away scot-free. And that's the point that I need to make and make forcefully. For all those of us who are appointees of the president's style may be very genteel, but nobody take him for granted.
You are not aware.
All right, so that was Koku Anyidoho, Director of Communications at the Presidency, explaining why Martin Amidu was sacked. There's a question that's just come up, which I will address in the course of the discussion. Was he sacked because of the, in quotes, misconduct that he displayed at that meeting, or because he failed to name the minister he alleges had committed fraud and crimes against the people of Ghana? But if you were the president, would you have maintained Martin Amidu as your minister? I want to start with Abdul Malik Kwekubaku Jr. I know he seems to think that the president should have long fired Martin Amidu. Why is that?
Well, two responses to that, or if you like, two-in-one response. The tone and trust of the Amidu statement, the press statement, was such that in my candid opinion, with the political experience and exposure that I have, I think would have been logical for him to have exited on his own, voluntarily, after issuing that kind of explosive statement. That is, if he didn't consult his boss before he issued the statement. If he didn't go to his boss, the appointing authority, to complain of all these things that he thought he knew about. And so he decided on his own to issue that kind of statement that implicated an unnamed ministerial colleague and also had collateral damage on the integrity of the corporate entity, which is part of. For me, serious politics, you ought to do that and resign. Or you resign before you do it. Okay? That is, if you didn't consult your boss. If you did and he refused to give you that option, the opportunity to do that, you can exercise your conscientious decision to exit and issue the statement and fight your case. If you didn't do that and you issued that kind of a statement and thought you could continue being part of the team, regardless, and I'm not talking here of whether the statement he issued was true or false. That's not the issue I'm raising now. Any serious government, any serious politician, you can't issue that kind of statement, explosive statement, with implications for everybody, including yourself, and think that you would go on operating as a minister of state, particularly a sensitive one like Attorney General and Minister of Justice, and no problems. No, I didn't believe that. So I was surprised if indeed somebody told me that, well, he knew all what I'm talking about. His decision was that I won't go, I want to be pushed. And because that has its own implications, that if he's pushed, then more or less it enhances his moral authority or integrity relative to the unfolding saga. These are all speculative pieces one can chew on. But the key point for me is that if I were the president or an advisor to a president or this president, and the sitting Attorney General made such an explosive statement without prior notice to me or to the president, and I'm asked for an input, I would suggest that he's shown the red card immediately. So, to be honest, he didn't go out himself, and I was surprised that there was some little delay, because apparently the meeting that the president called him for was on the 13th of is it January? Yeah, Friday. Last Friday. Yeah. And he had so much time to go and come back and
From what Koku says in that sound clip, he was given time to hopefully or expectedly to...
I have my problems with the handling, even the presidential handling.
You think he should have been fired instantly?
Yes, you see, there's a problem. There are problems. I just stated the preamble to show you where I stand.
Sure.
And this will go for all governments and all parties. And we can go into history and see what happened some other administrations where people were dismissed for such public outpouring of their positions, or what the implications were for the corporate entity. I can give examples. But you see, if you look at Daily Graphic, I have problems with the handling, and it's creating. If you look at the Thursday Daily Graphic, more or less, Mr. Hamidu was a subject, or if you like, an object of ridicule in some aspects, where he was supposed to have been pleading for leniency. He was virtually on his knees, asking for justice to be tempered with, is it mercy, and all the rest. Then if you look at the following day's one, he was fired for misconduct. Now, both were supposed to have happened at the same meeting. I'm trying to reconcile the two. Because if he was virtually begging, he was on his knees and asking for justice to be tempered with mercy, he couldn't have been misconducting himself. He had gone in there almost,
repentant.
Yes, repentant and pleading, unable to provide evidence, because Graphic tells us that the purpose of the meeting was the president had invited him because they wanted him to substantiate the allegation. I'm proceeding on the premise that this is quite
They're using the
factual.
Graphic publication.
Yeah, because it's a government source. And as we speak, all government spokespersons who have come to actually corroborate the fact that he's been sacked, of course there's now official release, have not denied. When Graphic, state-owned Daily Graphic, is quoting a government source, and this is an explosive, controversial issue, and there's no denier, I can safely assume that this report emanated from the presidency. In terms of there's nothing wrong with it as a source for a newspaper to do. But there's a problem straight away even with what we are being told. This is why I believe some people are asking for more details, more clarification. Otherwise, if a president dismisses a minister of state, really, what's the big deal? Haven't we had so many examples?
But isn't this peculiar? The man makes an allegation of corruption. This is the government that has positioned itself purporting to fight corruption. So if the man makes such an allegation in court, he's like a whistleblower. Shouldn't he be encouraged and supported?
Two sides. He doesn't. The president is not obliged to give the reasons under any circumstances. But the president is under obligation to institute an inquiry because of the nature of the allegation that has been made. So there are two things. I would have fired him immediately and institute an allegation. Now you've asked him to resign, he didn't resign, you fired him. There's still a key thing remaining, an outstanding issue, an investigation into that explosive allegation.
But this is somebody you're fired. How would you expect the person to cooperate? Presumably he has the information.
Oh, but you see, that is why for me at this stage, Martin is neither a hero or, if you like, a villain. In my candid opinion, he's in the middle. The subject is still, the jury is still out there. He can make a lot of, do a lot of justice to his integrity if now that he's been unchained, as it were, go out there and articulate his defense. I'm not sure he will do it in that manner. He's a very skillful guy. I've known him, a bit robust, of course, but he's experienced. He's had a lot of exposure. But the posterity will not forgive him if he doesn't take steps to articulate a defense of the allegation that he publicly made. And for that matter, the system too, and I mean the government, also will not be forgiven if in the name of transparency, probity, accountability, it fails to progress on this matter by instituting an inquiry. So the matter has just begun. It's too early in the day for anybody to think that dismissal of Martin Amidu for misconduct that we are not told of, that we could have avoided anyway, we could have forgotten about that, but because of the circumstances surrounding the statement they issued, we are being forced to ask such questions. How do we ask presidents why they have dismissed ministers? Because we haven't even put it in law.
And they have to
It's become a convention that they don't tell us why. Some say for good governance sake, they should.
But what does this say about the NDC's or the president himself and his government's position on fighting corruption? Somebody blows the whistle, the next minute he's fired. And what signals does that send?
I'll tell you something. I don't know if I brought the thing here, but President Mills, this I think is a statement President Mills issued. It's a press conference rather. I think it was 29th January 2007. And the relevant paragraph is, ladies and gentlemen of the media, a few words on corruption. At the Sunyani People's Assembly, President Kufuor repeated his swan song that anyone who has evidence of corruption against any MPP appointee must present it for action to be taken. I hope somebody will advise President Kufuor to stop belittling the profession to which he belongs by insisting on evidence before investigation. Every first-year law student knows that you investigate an allegation to gather evidence for prosecution and not the other way around. If you already have the evidence, then there's no need for investigation. You go to trial.
Okay.
Consistency. So if you ask Amidu for evidence, which was what President Kufuor was saying, let's grant only a fool doesn't change his mind. And I don't mean to insult the president. He's somebody I have great admiration and respect for. I don't want to be my statement to be reconstrued. Okay. So you positively have changed your mind on that matter, now that you are where the heat is. And he's refused to give you the evidence. So it is an allegation published in the newspapers by the Attorney General. You might as well proceed to the second leg of your wise saying. Institute an inquiry in order to unearth the evidence. and then from there